Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV, and my name is Sasha Star, and our guests are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha.
Great
Glad
to
to be
have you
here.
as always. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to be here as well.
Yes, and we would like to start with a video that you have there. Okay,
Yeah,
let's.
let's start with it.
Doesn't ask if you're ready. It just confronts you with the fact that's war. So you go to its first frontier to protect what's yours. Your people, your freedom, your right to choose, your right to exist. To all who protects us, in the sea, in the sky, and on the earth, in the tank, in the trench, and by the remote, wearing khaki, a uniform, or civilian clothes, under fire or at a gunpoint, seen on cameras or only known by their work. Glory and honor to our defenders, living and fallen. Today, as always, words are too small to express our gratitude, but we thank you. Thank you. To our heroes and sheroes in Defenders Day of Ukraine.
Wonderful, very uplifting video. And indeed, I noticed that on many programs, especially on Ukrainian language programs, the person in charge always thanks Ukrainian army to allow him to have an opportunity to have a show. Because, after Russian murderous attacks on infrastructure, very often there is not electricity. So they always thank you, our fighters, to allow us to continue to exist. And right now, Russia continue to prepare all the attacks on infrastructures. And they want to have a winter, this time even more miserable than the last one. And Ivan, how does it affect your life in Kiev?
Actually, we're just everyone is in such a nervous state, and we're expecting of these new missile strikes to come. They already tried our air defense in Kiev, and it was one of the biggest strikes for the previous several months after they switched to other regions when understood that the air defense in Kiev is pretty tough for them. But now they're using those Shahid drones. They've just launched enormous quantity of such drones in September, something like almost 500 of them. And unfortunately, they're quite easy to shut down, but because they have so many of them, so some of them hit the targets, and they hit the civilian infrastructure, the energy objects, and but Ukraine is standing, and we already live in such state for 2 years almost, and we understand that we have no other way. We can't surrender, because surrendering means that we'll be destroyed as a nation. I've watched recently a movie by Ukrainian journalist Dmytro Komarov. He released a new movie on YouTube devoted to Kharkov, which was liberated. Kharkov region was liberated almost a year ago, and in this movie there was a scene when one of the Ukrainian commanders says that when they've captured Russian soldiers and interrogated them and asked why are you hitting the civilian infrastructure? Why are you bombing those residential apartments in Kharkov? One of the Kharkov districts was almost destroyed with the multi-story residential buildings. And he said, we have an order. We have an order to destroy as more Ukrainians as we have to destroy Ukrainians as a nation. And of course, when we understand that our enemy has such orders, we can't surrender. We have to fight. We have to keep. Someone is fighting on the battlefield. Someone is assisting them in towns. Volunteers, all people who are just doing their regular job, paying taxes in order to survive and to support our army in this fight. And of course, we're thankful to the Western countries who help us to survive.
Yeah, speaking about help from Western countries, it's not as straightforward procedure as we may wish, and apparently now with the situation in Congress of this now revolt against Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and I think, Jonathan, to help me out, it's for the first time ever in American politics happening that some members trying to kick out the Speaker of the House, or it happened before?
There have been some efforts, not nearly as comprehensive before, but this is probably the most concerted effort I've seen thus far.
At least in modern history, for sure.
In modern history, yeah. And the this entire political situation in the United States, the situation that's developing now, reminds me very much of the situation that had developed in the American Civil War in around 1864, before the 1864 presidential elections. Essentially, what the Confederacy at that point could no longer count upon achieving a military victory over the Union. What they were counting on or hoping for was a political victory by the Democratic Party with McClellan as the presidential candidate, essentially because they knew that if McClellan won the election, that McClellan would be much more in favor of a negotiated peace with the Confederacy, and that the Confederacy would achieve de facto independence by then. So if we apply that analogy of that situation to the current situation, we can see that what Russia is counting on, because they no longer can count upon achieving a pure military victory over Ukraine in the conventional sense. What they are counting on is being able to last long enough and put enough pressure on Ukraine and its armed forces so that if the war is still going, by the time the presidential election next year comes around, they are hoping for a political victory that will enable a negotiated peace, which is what they hope to attain, which would enable Russia to sort of stay in the game for a future attempt to subjugate Ukraine. And Ukraine fully realizes this situation. So, right as I've said before, Ukraine is now in a race against time. They are trying to, on the battlefield, once the key point is their counteroffensive, being able to reach close enough to the Sea of Azov to being able to sever the supply link and the reinforcement link between Russia and Crimea. And increasing number of observers in the West have concluded this as well, that this is the crucial battlefield center of gravity, if you will, that if Ukraine can succeed in severing that link between Russia and Crimea, this will have major implications for the political outcome of the war. Ukraine will have a much greater chance, along with the Western allies, of compelling Russia to accept a de facto defeat. And at the very least, the most reasonable objective that we can hope for at this point is for an armistice, not a true peace treaty, because Russia will never agree to that. You know, the political objectives of both sides are too irreconcilable to be for such a peace treaty to ever be achieved. And so what we'll have to settle for is an armistice, a theater-wide ceasefire, which hopefully, with Russian forces expelled from Ukraine territorially, that's the reasonable objective for Ukraine, is to get the Russians out of Ukrainian territory altogether. And then you would have a situation that similar to what currently exists between North and South Korea. No war, no peace.
But at least there was a territorial agreement that I think it was 33rd parallel, where they divided. Okay, here's North Korea, north of this, and here is the South Korea, south of it. And we know what's happened with South Korea and what's happened with North Korea. And
Right.
on average, South Koreans are 5 centimeters taller than North Koreans. And before 1953, they were the same nation, the same height. Everything was the same. But then
The difference of the destinies of the two nations could not be more stark.
absolutely.
And hopefully, Ukraine will be able to totally expel Russians from their territory, so that the example of Ukraine in years to come will be much superior to that of Russia. Yeah, because Russia is setting itself up for a post-war environment in which they will not only suffer severe demographic effects, but economic fallout as well. And Ukraine, if we keep our fingers crossed and be persistent about this, Ukraine can count upon future integration into at least the European Union. And then, following on that, they would have to supplement this in the interim with bilateral agreements with individual members of NATO to try to work out, arrangements for recovery and rebuilding. And I still say a top priority for the U.S., if it were to be in a bilateral agreement with Ukraine, would be to send in the engineers, an engineer battalion or two, and maybe an engineer brigade structure to help teach and supervise the Ukrainians on the rebuilding of their territory with appropriate materials, and let the Ukrainians do the rest, because they have proven to be absolute masters of improvisation and doing the very best they can with what they have.
I think it's a very important item is that there were discussions. I don't know if it was followed by formal agreements, but when Zelensky was in the United States, to start a military production in Ukraine, whether it's a joint productions. Ivan, have you heard much about it? Something is...
Yeah, and we recently had forum, special event in Kiev, where Ministry of Defense of several countries and also representative of the huge weapon manufacturers have came and they've discussed how to set up the production of weapons in Ukraine. I actually can even try to find a video from about this event
nice.
for us to watch. Yeah,
Okay.
but actually, it's obvious that the weapon which was used in Ukraine, which was proved by Russo-Ukrainian war, will be very popular. Will become very popular in the world, and
Absolutely.
especially in terms of its efficiency. Because, for instance, every day we receive analytics of losses of casualties and number of weapons destroyed in Russian army, and we see that every day we have almost 30 or sometimes even 40 artillery systems destroyed in Russian army, and this actually becomes a huge problem for them, because they don't know where to find those artillery systems actually, and I've heard that.
North Koreans, that's where.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're,
Ivan,
negotiation
I think
to-
this would be a supremely ironic development if, as a result of this war, Ukraine is able to develop weapons that can produce by themselves, which they could then export at a nice profit to the rest of the world, and those profits could go to the rebuilding of Ukraine.
And you know what? Russia will try to acquire these systems through.
Oh yeah, the Russians will try to buy them. Yeah,
countries. They will say to China or to India,
talk
okay,
about
buy these
irony.
systems.
Definitely, I think definitely. Yeah, but I'm trying to find this video. I'm not sure that I will be
Well,
able
Russia
to
achieved
find it quickly.
a couple of things what they never counted on. First of all, that Finland and now Sweden will join NATO. That's one result. And number two, that they helped to create probably the most powerful army in Europe by now. It's Ukrainian army. They never had to worry about Ukrainian army 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Now they do.
Hear about, Ukrainian army, let's run as soon as possible.
You just went and made the Ukrainians mad. That was really smart.
Yeah. There's, did you find it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I found it, and now I'm trying to upload it. It's actually 4 minutes long, but I think we can afford to watch.
Let's see. It's very important to know the latest news directly
Okay,
from Ukraine.
so I hope that Mark will be able to launch it.
Okay, Mark, please help us.
Is our video ready, Mark?
Yeah.
Can you play it?
We're calling upon divine intervention, or at least the intervention of the Mark.
At least, yeah. Okay, but while we're waiting for video to start,
In the meantime, let's do finger puppets.
That's a good one. So
or you could read that poem I sent you.
no, I'm still trying to read and educate myself as much as I can to the one contradiction here is that I cannot solve. Basically, the war most likely could have been averted. It's not that history determined to be that way and there was nothing would be done. It could. In fact, Biden, even several months before the war started, he already started to build up the coalition of European countries, NATO countries, and so on. So he calculated that most likely there could be a war. And then he was warning Ukraine, Zelensky, that the war is unavoidable. It's going to happen 16th of February or 20th of February, so on. So it was basically in Biden's head that was something that was going to happen, and he didn't try that hard to avoid it because he perhaps thought that it's to U.S. advantage to have that war, if it will be the war. Nobody knew.
I would say not, because he could not have anticipated in advance the fact that Ukraine would be so successful, would have been so successful in resisting.
That's a different story. But if he didn't expect Ukrainian to be so resilient, then probably it would be nice to try to avoid the war, because if the outcome, the most certain outcome in his head was that Russia will crush Ukraine in a matter of a few days, then you must avoid it. So maybe he saw that, well, it's not certain, maybe they will, maybe they will not. Now, if they will, okay, that's what unfortunately what's happened. But if they don't, then it could be a prolonged war where U.S. slowly but surely started to supply Ukraine, same as NATO. with weapons, with different artillery systems, the HIMARS later on, and so on. So there was a resolve on Biden's mind that, okay, first of all, Ukraine is there to stay. They're not going to run. They're not going to disappear. So now we want to help them to be successful at that war. And all of a sudden, I thought that for a while that he actually was able to prevail over the fear of Russian escalation and nuclear threats and all that stuff. But now it came back all of a sudden that his resolve not to provide ATACMS and slow down the transfer of F-16s and so on. So how to read Biden's mind? How he is able to pursue one course and yet contradict it with another course? Jonathan, what to make it out? Well, okay, he's an old.
Okay, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quote a former president, Obama, who had said about Joe Biden, never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up. That's his opinion, not mine.
Okay.
But, yeah, that observation may tell you an awful lot about the observations of others. One of the most difficult things to do as an intelligence analyst, and I've been an intelligence analyst for my entire career, is that one of the most difficult things I've written is that one of the most difficult things to predict is when your opponent is about to do something stupid.
Yeah, you don't.
You can't. Sometimes just sheer stupidity is the only explanation that fits, and I'm sorry, but sometimes that's the only thing. If you try to read logic into it, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Excellent, Jonathan. You helped me a great deal. I really thank you so much for that. I think media is now
as one of our American comedians, Ron White, who's recently retired, a comedian Ron White once said, "You can't fix stupid. There's not a pill you can take. There is not a class you can go to. Stupid is forever."
Can you contain stupidity?
Again?
Can you contain stupidity?
Well, as Albert Einstein once commented that only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not so sure about the universe.
And you know what's Russians' two biggest problems through history for last 1,000 years?
Okay.
In Russian, it's дураки и дороги. It means stupid people and their roads.
And in Ukraine, it is stupid people, roads, and Russians. We have three problems.
So you got an extra problem to deal with. Okay.
One
more problem.
Yeah, we are ready to watch the video. So
good.
Let's see it.
Let's do it.
Is hitting a new level.
This is the first international forum of defense industries. 252 defense companies producing a full range of military and defense systems are represented here.
Its purpose is to unite Ukrainian and foreign manufacturers for long-term strengthening of Ukraine's defense capability and the defense potential of its partners based on NATO technologies. There was a new alliance of defense industries created, and 38 companies from 19 countries signed on it right at the forum.
We are interested in cooperation between specialized enterprises of our countries.
Ukraine's first Defense Industries Forum has struck a nerve in global security policy. The military might of the free world is being forged in Ukraine.
Right now, Ukraine fights in the biggest and the most technological war since World War II. It shields entire Europe and designates future security architecture of the whole world.
Today, we struck 20 deals of various scales. The crucial thing is that the forum let Ukrainian companies get to know their foreign partners in order to create common projects and help the foreign companies understand that Ukraine has worthy industries capable of producing the weaponry.
Tons of weapons have already been supplied to help Ukraine fight back, but the final aim is to make it self-sufficient in defense.
Our vision is to develop military products and services of the world class and export them after the war.
So, creation, development, and production of modern weapons in the country is the key point. Ukraine has got a unique combat experience, military expertise, and technologies. Many startups in its tech sector have already switched to pursue military projects, especially in drone production. Robotech is keeping up. This Scorpio 3 robot was also designed by the Ukrainian manufacturer, can be both a fire and reconnaissance tool. Moreover, in the long-term perspective, Ukraine can manufacture weapons not only for itself, but also for other partners. Ukraine has already launched a number of important co-production projects. For instance, Stockholm and Kiev inked a deal for joint production of Combat Vehicles 90 in Ukrainian factories. Warsaw also agreed on production of 125mm ammos by Kiev. Turkish Baykar has already launched building a Ukraine-based plant to make Bayraktar drones. And one of Ukraine's most important backers in the fight, German Rheinmetall, is about to build a tank and APC production and repair in Ukraine in the coming months. And more is yet to come. To ramp it all up and push it to a new level, Ukraine needs the developments of its partners. Altogether, it can be a powerful tool, combined with the experience of Ukraine's armed forces who have already learned to use many NATO weapons. So the Alliance of Defense Industries will help fulfill 3 major objectives: uninterrupted supply of ammunition and hardware, integration of Ukraine's military-industrial complex into the Euro-Atlantic one, and the setup of modern military inventions for Ukraine. All of it is vital to not just win over the Russian terror, but to preserve peace and prevent any aggression afterwards.
Nations have a right for protection. Let's build the arsenal for the free world together.
That
It's
is quite an
wonderful.
inspiring video.
Very, very inspiring. And this is one of Ukraine's priorities, is to establish its own military production, especially if there are so many 252 foreign companies came to visit and talk to Ukrainian leaders, and Mr. Zelensky was there or so on. That's very, very encouraging. And I hope
Now,
this
if you combine that with if we can get Ukraine's grain exports restored and get them restored back up to full production at the conclusion of this war, and then, as I've suggested before, if the Ukraine can then cooperate with NATO and become integrated into what I've advocated as a global ballistic missile defense system, which would involve upgrading on the part of the U.S., upgrading its space force to include a space fleet capable of conducting boost phase ballistic missile defense. When you have all those ingredients coming together, then you have the very real possibility for Ukraine becoming the eastern bulwark of NATO.
Yes, and I think that in the near future, I'm talking maybe 2-3 years, once the war will be ending obviously in Ukrainian favor. As a result of it, there will be no more Putin. Whether Russia will being taken apart for, I don't know, a number of republics, like 8 republics, or some people believe 16 republics could be there. It's a different question, but I think that will be one of the outcomes. Then Ukraine will become a leader of the post-Soviet territories. All the countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, all these countries, they will relate to Ukraine and will try to learn from Ukraine and get their Ukrainian experience. The Ukraine will become a leader of this part of the world, as it has to be because of the history of the Kievan Rus. Kiev was the mother of the Slavic people, and Kiev will end up as a leader of this territory, not Russia. Russia is, they have too much Asian, I'm not saying blood, but all their historical experience. Many of their laws are coming from Genghis Khan. For 250 years, there was no Russia. There was a Ulus Juche, Genghis Khan's oldest son, Juche. That was what was for 250 years. There was no Renaissance. There was no humanity in Russia. That's why they're so cruel. These people, soldiers, commanders, and all this stuff. And unfortunately, Ukraine has to deal with that. But Ukraine will prevail. There is no doubt in my mind. In this case, Slava Ukraini. Glory to Ukraine. Okay. And thank you so much for today's program. And we'll see you Friday, same place, same time, hopefully with the great news.
Looking forward.
Bye-bye, everybody.